Thanksgiving is a time for being thankful. So I hope you fucking people are thankful for what we do for you to bring you this shit.
A positive note to start on.
uh, so we tried to find. They don't really make that many Thanksgiving cartoons because I think no one really knows what to do with it. They're like, want to make a Thanksgiving cartoon, and they're like, oh yeah, genocide, and they kind of decide not to.
Yeah, there's really not a massively positive spin you can put on. Although last year we did find one, but there's only so much you can do with that concept, I suppose.
Yeah. So we had to Google Thanksgiving specials, and it only took us 5 minutes to find these, but I feel like that's like 6 minutes more than it would take to find a good Christmas or Halloween special. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we only found, like, I feel like we've already been through most of them. I think we've got about
Yeah.
two left.
I hope you're not terribly attached to Animate's Thanksgiving because I'm sure we can muster something, but I don't know, man.
Yeah, this might be the last Animates Thanksgiving special that we do.
We can do Christmas and Halloween till we float, but like, so we found BC the first Thanksgiving, and the Berenstain Bears meet Big Paw. Two half-hour Thanksgiving specials. Gosh,
Were they only half an hour? Because I feel like I watched 17 hours of Thanksgiving specials.
Felt like, yeah, you'd be surprised. Well, the Thanksgiving feast lasts 3 days. So perhaps these were meant to loop for 3 days ad nauseum with their monotonous, repetitive content.
Unfortunately, my patience did not last 3 days. Well, were these terrible? Yes. What is even the plot of BC? BC, the first Thanksgiving, is set in cavemen times. They try and catch a turkey so they can cook said turkey. That is the plot. It's not really Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving, happened sometime after prehistoric age,
Right.
which this is kind of a mixture of, there were dinosaurs and cavemen coexisting, as was the style at the time in the 70s or whenever this came from. It's very weird. There's no talking for the first 10 minutes, but there is talking in the second 10 minutes. Well, I cannot explain this because I was watching it and I was like, oh, I see. They're completely silent because they're cavemen and they have not yet developed language. And then halfway through, they all start conversing normally. And I was like, oh, I see. well, for me.
I don't know if I would say that there was no talking because there's an inexplicable gag where a caveman makes a fire and it screams.
Yes, very noisily.
It lets out this blood-curdling shriek. I can't explain the joke. I can't explain anything about it. Among the first things that happened in this special is a caveman builds a fire and it lets out a horrible shriek.
Yeah, I think your summing up of that as I can't explain it is pretty much like that's how I felt every scene in this. Like when there's a particular scene where the caveman and the turkey go into a tree together and they're just like talking inanely, and it's obviously meant to be a joke, but I couldn't tell you what the joke is. I have no
the part where it goes with the tree that looks suspiciously like boobs, that one.
That's the one, yes.
And it lasts for like 7 minutes.
What do you got in here? Oh, I found this. Oh, I found this over here. And it goes on for so long. And I was like, what is the joke? I don't understand. It's like a recorded conversation, like that someone has just played and gone, oh, that'll do. You know, stick anything over it. Stick the Jim Jones Cult Massacre audio over it. The audience aren't going to know. Just put that on there. Oh, look at your people. Look at yourselves. Let's try and die with a little dignity. That would have been funnier.
The two voice actors were kind of just muttering to each other. They're like, this isn't all going into special. We're just kind of going around our, like, hyping themselves for their actual lines, unaware that the entirety of their in the booth muttering would be in the special.
Yeah.
I don't want to get a wrinkle. Right off. Well, hold it. You got feathers all over your suit. Feathers? There. You look fine. Oh, thanks. It's okay, kid.
Because this is based on a comic strip. I only found out after I watched it.
That feels very appropriate, like a newspaper type comic strip type thing, I'm guessing. Yeah.
I was getting that vibe from like the occasionally mellow jazz going over the just like scene setting that you would, because it feels structurally almost like a Peanuts or a Garfield special. The way it's like you see a gag that's maybe adapted from a comic, and that's why it feels kind of disconnected. And there's some scene settings, just mellow music. But I'd argue that Peanuts and Garfield never had me literally throwing my hands up in bewilderment the way the sequence of the cavemen drinking the water did. Do you remember that part?
I was just trying to think about it in my head. I remember where they ate the rocks.
There's a part like before they decide to catch the turkey, but after the fire screaming, not a sentence I'd ever say, where like all the cavemen go out to get a drink of water from the stream. There's one, I think the brawny woman caveman picks up another one and swats him against the water. Oh, yeah, and then one starts to lick the sand for some reason. They all have like a weird way of drinking water from the stream. Yeah. And I remember just like I literally threw my hands up like if I didn't understand a school, like my students when they don't understand an assignment get mad at me. I was like, what the fuck? Like, what are we even doing here?
It was not meant for a 20-minute special. I distinctly get the feeling this should not have been made.
No, I can't imagine the strip is any good if this is like the effect of the content.
If it's like one or two, you could make a couple of cavemen gags.
Yeah.
Like from that time period. Like, you know, the Flintstones as a thing exists, doesn't it? That's a concept that works. But there's just nothing. There's no like witty dialogue or anything to sustain this.
Exactly. Man, so BC still goes to this day as a comic, but it is not written by its original cartoonist who passed away in 2007. His name is I think Johnny Hart is his name. And at first, you know, he went through a controversy where at some point in the 80s, so after this special, but while he was still writing BC, he found himself saved by Christianity, which I imagine creates a conflict of interest when you write a comic about hominid Neanderthals.
Yes.
And he started to employ heavily Christian themes into BC.
In what sense?
Yeah. Gradually, newspapers stopped dropping him, which I think, as far as I could tell, there was one cartoon depicting a menorah morphing into a cross. I'll let you make that if you will. And so, like, multiple large newspapers dropped him, and I'm willing to wager that's why we don't know BC the way we know Garfield and Peanuts to this day. That's what I kind of washed this out with, was I watched some Snoopy cartoons because I was like, I need a good comic adaptation after this.
Yeah, I mean, things like Garfield and Snoopy, I think, are evidence that you can turn like a 3-panel comic strip into something sustainable.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know why this was as bad as it was.
Well, I'm weird. It's so bizarre because like I said, I wasn't aware this was a comic strip when we picked it. I'm kind of working on a video about how comic strips adapt into holiday specials so well. And the thing is, with like, Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and Garfield, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all those, they're kind of just disparate, disconnected little skits too. Like, here's a few things to do with the Peanuts when it's Halloween and fall. Here's a few things to do with Garfield around Christmas. There's like a thin thread connecting them, but it is ultimately just those lax moments. But they have a lot of, number one, they're well written and not like just the nonsense that this is.
Yeah.
And they're very atmospheric too. There's always there's very experienced musicians working on them. You got Desiree Goyette and Bill Melendez always bringing their talents to create just a very distinct feel to them. And I can't imagine that kind of talent was here.
It doesn't seem like he
No.
even wrote anything for it. It
No.
seems like someone just passed them the strip and go, hey, here you go, do something with this. And no effort was made. Some of the animation is kind of okay.
Yeah, it fits the style.
It does, and it's not like lazy.
No.
It's about what you would expect, I guess. And I
There's
think the bits that do land are just when they use the animation to make it look a bit quirky.
There's the hot cave woman who like splashes water onto people with her ass. I thought that was a nice touch. Like I sound like I'm riffing. That's at least that I can't imagine that was a lazy move. Someone had to put effort into that.
I thought the eating of the rocks at the end, I thought was a fairly decent joke. The only bit that like sticks out vividly in my head that I can picture as we talk about this is the scene
There's
where
a good crunch behind those rocks.
Yeah, there is. It's like it's a good sort of rock eating scene. Where she's like
among the greatest of them.
Yeah, you laugh, but there are more rock eating scenes out there.
Oh, totally.
It's just a bit where she's ladling it out, and you really feel the weight between each rock as it falls onto the bed. Like that was a decently executed joke.
Yeah.
If this had been 2 minutes long and had been a short story about them trying to find a turkey and then having to eat some rocks instead, I think it would have been passable.
That character serving the rocks, by the way, is tastelessly named by Mr. Johnny Hart, who drew the comics. She's called the Fat Broad. Unfortunately.
Not named in this episode, I don't think.
I don't think so. No.
That didn't get past standards and practices.
No. Johnny Hart found Jesus, but didn't think to change the Fat Broad's name to something respectful.
He was a born again Christian, but he never once dropped his no fat chick stance.
There are two in BC, before the era before Christ. There were two women, a really hot one and the Fat Broad.
Good God. Well, at least he's dead. So.
Oh my God. That brings us to the Berenstain Bears Meet Big Paw. Barely a Thanksgiving special, I feel like.
The word thanks is mentioned. That's about the biggest link we get. Does anyone say Thanksgiving?
I
can't remember if they do. I think they just say give thanks. I don't think
they say
I think Thanksgiving.
The Thanksgiving legend is simple enough. It says, if the bears become selfish and greedy and unkind to the needy and insufficiently thankful for nature's great bounty, that monster of monsters, Big Paw, would come and gobble up Bear Country, county by county.
Big Paw?
So the Berenstain Bears are a picture book series. They were written, I don't know if they're still, I bet it still goes to this day, but they were written originally by a couple whose surname was Berenstain. Their first works, they kind of have the opposite of Johnny Hart's arc, because before settling into wholesome family books, they actually drew erotica cartoons.
I was just going to make that joke. And that was what
joke,
it was.
It's a fact.
Well, there we go. Interesting.
There's a whole, yeah, they had a weird, bizarre career up until they kind of found their footing making the Berenstain Bears, which I read quite a bit when I was a kid. Cutely drawn. They teach lessons. This cartoon has like a weird rhyming scheme to it that I don't think was ever in the books.
Interesting. Yes, I thought that was such a notable feature. I assumed that was how all of the books kind of went.
I got a vibe from this that I didn't think to look it up. I got a vibe that reminded me of the older Dr. Seuss. Do you know the Cat in the Hat and some of those Dr. Seuss animations from like around then, which obviously have a lot of rhyming? It just about gave me that vibe. I wonder if some of the same people worked on it or something.
Yeah, they are very similar. The animation in this one is actually quite nice, I thought.
Yeah, it's very expressive. There's just
there's a lot of pointing and face movements and people's bodies morphing into different shapes. But it never looks weird. It's always kind of like, oh, that's impressive.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's something weird about how it's directed. Like you'll cut to a really good Papa Bear expression, but something about the timing just feels a little, like in an abstract, a little bit off. I really can't put my finger on why though.
I think it might be that sort of uncanny valley effect where maybe they've rotoscoped somebody because it looks a bit too human coming from a bear.
I see.
Maybe that's it.
I
know exactly what you mean.
That's a fine line to draw. Oh man, because like human models can really come in handy for animation like this, but it's like you got to really balance it. There's this, I don't know if you saw me retweet it, but it went a little viral on Twitter. There's just this great video of the woman who wrote the music for the Garfield holiday special. She modeled a dance for Garfield to do, and it's this really just funny characteristic dance Garfield does around his bed, and it cuts back and forth between just this woman in the 80s doing this fat cat dance and how they just adapt it really well. I think these people could have taken a note from that.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between success and abstract weirdness with that type of animation style is very narrow.
Oh yeah. It's tough. I'm not trying to, I sound a little disparaging. It's a tough that I applaud the effort, because like again, this special isn't exactly terrible. It's got some weird things about it.
Yeah, it's fine. This is in no way comparable to BC, the first Thanksgiving. This is fine. It's a children's Thanksgiving special with some mostly nice animation.
Oh yeah.
And some terrible musical numbers.
Yeah.
Really reaching in those musical numbers lately. I feel like we've had some very bad ones on the last few episodes.
Whenever Mama Bear started to sing, I was like, all right. I kind of hit the skip button a bit.
She does that a stranger is just somebody you don't already know. I don't think that's even the melody, but I just remember those for the lyrics.
It was that, and then she sings another song while she's like getting the house ready at home.
There's another one where she's saying it's about giving thanks, and it's just like the same thing repeated over and over again. Like thanks, give thanks, we like to give thanks. I was like, oh God, bring back hands and hands. All is forgiven.
What is a stranger? A stranger's just somebody you don't already know. He could be a friend.
With that kind of friend, who needs a foe?
He could be a prince He could be a schmo or just a regular sort of a Joe.
And even though it's a Thanksgiving special, and the reason it doesn't feel like that is because really any conflict to do with Thanksgiving has to do with this character of Big Paw, who is like an urban legend illustrated as like a Krampus-esque figure who storms into town to punish people for not being thankful or grateful at this abstract time of year.
Yes, he is not, as you would first suspect, Bigfoot stroke Sasquatch. As he points out in his song, where he says that he supersedes them all, which is an awkward lyric to get into a song.
Right.
But he manages to do it.
You can have your Sasquatch, your abominable snowman. My name is Big Paw, I supersede them all.
So he is not Bigfoot. Do not confuse him between those two people. He's not a cryptid. He is merely a mythical creature who punishes those who are ungrateful, allegedly.
Which is such a weird way to go about a Thanksgiving holiday. I guess that's how they angle it as a holiday. This is the day Big Paw determines if you're grateful enough. And
the night Big
which
Paw
is not
came
part
home.
of Thanksgiving. My mom has never once told me, if you're not thankful today, the pilgrims come and shoot you with their blunderbuss.
Yes, I mean, you said this earlier, but it's more of a Michael Myers type situation where Big Paw storms into town once a year, murders a bunch of people, and then disappears into the wilderness until he's needed again.
Just they eventually like form an angry mob of like various means of maiming that they're saving just for such an occasion. I got such Halloween Kills vibes from it. There's even like a line. There's a line towards the end where it's like, because Big Paw, you know, at first is this pariah, but saves the children and proves himself. And Mama Bear says something like, and he saved us from ourselves. Like, you know, like he made us realize not to be, which I think is like arguably a more subtle line than he's made monsters of us.
Yes.
Michael Myers did.
Yeah, a more subtle version of Halloween Kills.
Sadly.
There is no scene in this in which an escaped mental patient is chased by an angry mob and then jumps to his death.
Oh, man. Yeah.
There was also no scene in which Papa Bear grabs a gun and attempts to shoot Big Paw 6 times and then brags about it afterwards.
Papa Bear, oh man, just so willing to kill him.
And bring all those skunk bombs and gimmicks and widgets. This guy makes King Kong look like Singer's midgets. Eyes like bonfires and really large. Bugler? Sound the charge!
Evil dies tonight!
Does that about wrap that one up?
I can't really think of anything else to say about it.
No.
It was fine. You know, we watched some fine stuff on this series, which you know, I don't really think I can bring myself to like absolutely savage things like this that were made for a specific purpose and accomplish that purpose.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I would argue BC did not accomplish that purpose. Like, who's going to want to watch that on Thanksgiving every year? Whereas this is kind of charming and wholesome, and I could see kids liking it.
Evil dies tonight!